What's up, YouTube? It's the Action Figure Grader coming back to you with another loose graded vintage Star Wars market update. And the premise of this video is really to cover fairly common figures in high grade and whether we've seen a drop off in price like we've seen, broadly speaking, for the market. And I think that the results kind of speak for themselves that yes, to answer the question, prices have come down a little bit, but still, even the common items in high grade continue to command pretty good prices. And that's what we're going to cover today. Before I dig in any further, I want to say thank you to my latest Patreon supporter, John Cousins. I've gotten to know John personally. I got to meet him at one of the different toy conventions here locally, either last year or the year before that. And John's got a fantastic collection. And I just appreciate the channel support, so thank you for becoming a Patreon member. All right, let's go ahead and dig right in. The first one is an AFA 85 R2-D2 solid dome. So this one did have an older case style, but it was an AFA 85 standard Hong Kong. Nothing particularly special about it, but it's a high grade. And the price reflects the fact that even in high grade, even with an older case, people are going to pay up for it. This one sold for $444. Free shipping, 18 bids. That one closed on August 19th. So pretty beautiful looking figure there, and further proof that R2-D2s continue to command pretty big money. Next up, we got that same seller that always pops up on eBay with really high grade, loose graded AFA figures. This one was a Jawa, but this one is a little more unique because this was the dark green stitch version. And it's not super rare, but it's a lot more rare than like the light brown stitch or the dark brown stitch. Tougher to find the dark green stitch has been my experience. And this one was an AFA 85, beautiful example. That one sold for $237.50, which I would argue that price is down a little bit. A light brown stitch can go for about the same amount, but I would much rather have this one, which is the dark green stitch. And you can see it very clearly in some of the different photos here. Maybe it doesn't come across too well when I zoom in on it, but if you look at the far away shot, it's definitely a green color versus the brown for the robe, and pretty nice looking figure there. Textured cape on that one, but beautiful example of the dark green stitch. Next up was an AFA 85 Luke Bespin blonde hair, another very common figure, but it was an 85, brand new case. That one sold for $275. I would say that this one's probably down maybe 25 to 50 bucks depending on the auction and what time frame you're looking at, but I've found several examples from old videos where this one was going for 300 to 325 earlier this year. So this one is down, but it's still a very high grade Luke, one of the main characters. Next up, this is a beautiful example, and this is an AFA 90 red-haired Princess Leia Hoth. So the red hair in general is a little tougher to find. These appeared on some of the ESB card backs like the 41As. I've got a 41A back ESB card with the red-haired Leia. And so it's a little bit more desirable variant than the brown-haired version. And it's also an AFA 90. And we know how AFA 90s usually command a pretty big multiple versus an 85. I would say an 85 for this one would probably set you back $250 to $275, somewhere in that ballpark. This one sold for $449. So big premium on that one. But certainly a beautiful example. That's the first time I've seen an AFA 90 for this Leia Hoth in a long time at auction on eBay. So I think that's a pretty good price, really, for what it is. Next up, I got two different examples of the exact same figure, exact same grade, exact same COO, exact same case style, everything. And it just shows you how the market can fluctuate so much depending on photos, depending on when the auctions ended, who else is looking out there. But this is a standard Hong Kong Darth Vader, nothing special about it, but it's a first 12 figure in very high grade. That one sold for $320 in an auction, plus another $10.65 shipping. So let's call it about $330. Now, that one closed on August 15th. This one closed 5 days later. Exact same figure, Hong Kong Darth Vader, and that one sold for $228. So who knows? That's a huge price swing. $330 versus $238. I mean, you're talking about almost let's call that a 45% price difference for the exact same figure, exact same grade. So it's all over the place right now with where the market is, and it's hard to make any kind of sense of some of these prices. But I just thought I would do that comparison since they were exact same figures, and it's just incredible to see that price difference. Next up was a Death Squad commander. This one is the light blue emblem, Hong Kong. So you can see on his chest there, that emblem is the lighter blue color. I've found that it's harder to find this version of the Hong Kong Death Squad commander with the light blue emblem versus the dark blue emblem. And AFA does label both of them, even though I find the dark blue emblem to be kind of more standard. This one was an AFA 85 example. That one sold for $280. To me, that's a price I'd be willing to pay all day long. What's the difference versus the light blue versus the dark blue? Probably not that much. $250 to $260 for the dark blue versus $280 to $290 for the light blue. But it's just been my experience. I have nothing to base that on other than my observations of looking on eBay. I just, in general, I find this one to be a little tougher to find. Next up was an 85 Zuckuss. This one did not have the circles on the heels and knees. So there's two different Hong Kongs that you can pick up, either with or without the circles. This one was without the circles. I find this one to be less common than the one with the circles on the knees and heels, and it's referring to the back of the figure. On the backs of it, it's just the EPM marks that some of them had it, some of them did not. This one did not. It was a beautiful example. That one sold for $177.50, and that's about the same price as one with the circles and the heels and knees for Zuckuss. So I don't think that there's a big price premium for either one of them, but $177.50 took that home. Next up was the orange logo AT-AT driver, Hong Kong. There's obviously also a red logo. I find the orange logo to be probably about the same as the red. I don't know. Maybe the red is a little bit less common. Maybe some of you who have more experience with the AT-AT driver could fill me in on that. But to me, it seems like they're both about the same. I don't see them less frequently, either one of them. But this one was an AFA 85, beautiful example. And that one sold for $221, which is a big number for a loose graded AT-AT driver, a fairly common figure, but tough to get in a high grade these days, especially with AFA. Next up, I had two different Forloms that sold, and they both sold for around the same price. AFA 85 for both of them the Hong Kong. That one sold for $177.72, and then this one sold for $188.50. And, is there a difference in the armor color? I have seen Hong Kongs that have a slight shade difference to that brown armor and backpack. Looks like this one's maybe a little more red, but it could just be lighting. But $177 and $188.50, so pretty tight price range on both of those. Next up was a Hong Kong TIE Fighter, another very common figure, but another one that's pretty tough to get in a high grade, mainly because of the gloves and the boots, because that gray scratches super easy on the gloves and the boots, and obviously the helmet emblems, those can scratch off very easily, but this was a very clean example. Again, though, a very common Hong Kong variation. I find the no COO to be tough to find in an AFA 85. That's the only one I kind of consider myself missing. I've got the Letty, I've got the Hong Kong, I've got the Spanish PBP in an AFA 80, and I think I've got one more. I can't remember, but the no COO is the one I'm still missing. I'd like to get that one. But anyway, that one sold for $224.50. Again, a very fair price. Next up, a very common figure, but tough in a 90 grade, and that's an AFA 90 Weequay Hong Kong. There's also a no COO as well as a Lily Letty version. This one sold for $280. That's a big number relative to an AFA 85. I bet you could pick up an AFA 85, same case style, same COO, for less than $150. So that's a big premium when you think about it, going from an 85 to a 90, going from, let's call it 125 to 150, all the way up to 280 for an AFA 90. Next up was an AFA 90 Bib Fortuna, and this is one where I would expect the price premium to be there versus an AFA 85. I would think an AFA 85 is probably in that same ballpark as the Weequay, 125 to 150. This one sold for $175, so not as big of a premium going from an 85 to a 90 on Bib Fortuna versus Weequay, both of them common figures. But to me, this one seems like it would be tougher to get in a 90 grade, mainly because of the robe. The robe can, scratch, and like the stitches can come out, and you can get like stains on the cape and things like that. So a little surprised that one didn't go higher, in my opinion. Next up was an AFA 85 Luke Jedi Knight. This is a green saber. This is a Taiwan. It was labeled as a Hong Kong in the title for the auction, but it was a Taiwan figure. So this is the flesh face. There's also a pale face Taiwan figure, but this was the flesh face version. That one sold for $202.50. That's a bargain price, in my opinion, for a very high-grade Luke Jedi. I mean, we talk about in my loose complete videos for Luke Jedis, they go for, sometimes as high as $150, $175. So to get an AFA 85 Taiwan for that price, that's a bargain, in my opinion, $202.50. Next up, I've got some UKG items to round things out. This was a Taiwan Boba Fett. The head was turned, unfortunately. The UKG usually labels this as the V5 Imperial Blaster. This one was not, so it makes me think that potentially that is not the V5 Blaster. I don't know. But given the price, I would say it probably was not. This one sold for 160 pounds, which is $202 US for a UKG 85 Taiwan Fett, but most likely without the correct blaster. Next up was an R2-D2 sensor scope graded UKG 85%, and he pulled up some information here that says that there's a soft torso as well as a hard torso, and he's labeling this one as the hard torso, although UKG did not label it as such. This one was the 1977 date stamp. There's also a 1978 date stamp. But nice looking figure, very high grade. That one sold again for 223 pounds versus, which is $283 US. So pretty good buy on that one, in my opinion. Next up was a UKG 90% brown snake Yoda, another very common figure. And this one went a little bit higher than I expected. To me, I equate a UKG 90 to like an AFA 85 or 85 plus. And there's been several data points recently for this brown snake Hong Kong Yoda in an AFA 85 plus that have sold for around $330. Well, this one was a UKG 90 and it sold for $370. Part of it is the fact that it's labeled a 90. Part of it could be currency conversion going from the pound to the dollar. Part of it just could be that there were buyers at that right time that decided to bid it up. So I just thought it was an interesting comparison looking at that 90 grade UKG Yoda. Next up was an 85 UKG Hong Kong Biker Scout. This is the long mask version, and look how bright white that figure is. This is every bit of an 85, if you ask me. You could argue maybe that the shoulder pauldrons have a little bit of discoloration, but look how bright white that torso is, and the legs are also nice and bright white. To me, this is every bit of an 85, in my opinion. I think if you crack this one out and send it to AFA, I would be shocked if it didn't get an 85 as well. But that one got that one sold for 141 pounds, which is $178. Given how difficult it is to get an 85 of anything for biker scouts or stormtroopers, just the first 12 stormtroopers, to me, I think that was a really good buy. I would have paid that all day long. Next up, and finally, we had a UKG 80% EV99. The only last 17 in this batch, but beautiful example, new case style from UKG. That one sold for 241 pounds, which is $305 US. Another very good buy, in my opinion, given what these can sell for loose and ungraded. All day long, I'd pay that price. I think that's a really nice example for $305 US. So anyway, just wanted to share some fairly common figures. There's really not anything rare in here, right? Everything that we looked at in this video, for the most part, in my opinion, were items that we see every single video. And, you could maybe argue that like the grades are tough to find, like that Leia Hoth that was an AFA 90. That's something that you don't see every day. But the actual characters themselves, the figure molds themselves, the COOs, the countries of origin for all the figures, they're all fairly common. So it was just kind of an interesting kind of look at what is going on in the market currently for fairly common figures in high grade. And I hope you found this video helpful. Thanks as always for watching, and I'll be back soon.